Hey guys, welcome back. If you're new here, subscribe and drop a comment. Tonight's story is about old man trying to hold on his own farm while strangers move across his land at dusk, and something dead is coming behind them. So, let's get started.
The steer has been dead for 4 days. I know this because I counted from the morning it went down, which was a Thursday, though I stopped writing the day of the week on the calendar 2 winters ago. I just mark the number now. I can see the carcass from here, from the front window, bloated and dark against the pale fence wire at the northeast post. The hide has gone tight across the ribs and the belly is swollen out of shape. The smell carries on the southwest wind and has been carrying for 2 days. I have not moved it. I should have moved it the first morning. Dragging a full-grown steer across hard-packed ground in July is a 2-person job, and I have been the only person on this property for 8 months. So it sits, and every morning I look at it and think about moving it, and every morning something else gets done first. This is the Baines place. My grandfather broke this ground in 1922. My father ran it after him, and I ran it after my father. And for 31 years I ran it with my wife, Ruth, and she has been gone for a year and 4 months. Cancer caught her just before the worst of it started, and the hospital did what it could, and then the hospital stopped being a hospital, and that was that. My son Dale drove into Wichita in the second week of the outbreak to look for his wife, who worked at a clinic on the east side of the city. He did not come back. His daughter Bryn was already gone by then, heading south with a group she had been traveling with out of Salina. I have not heard from Bryn in almost 2 years. I have assumed she is dead, because assuming people are alive is a way of making bad decisions. I am sitting at the front window with the Marlin across my knees. The Marlin is a 30-30 lever action, nothing special, the rifle I used when I ran cattle through the 90s. I have 114 rounds for it in the cellar. I also have a 12-gauge pump with 38 shells, a 22 rifle with a partial brick of ammunition, a machete, a pitchfork I keep by the barn door, a nail bat I made from fence planking, and a box of 3-inch ring shanks, and 2 hog snares set in the drainage ditch approach on the south. The other thing I have is a Kawasaki utility vehicle with sheet metal bolted to the front bumper and both sides. Russell Ham, my neighbor from the place 2 miles east, did that welding job in the first summer. He died of sepsis in late October of the second year, an infection from a bad cut he got on a fence staple, and I buried him under the elm at the northeast corner of the yard. I have not had help since then, and I have not looked for any. The property is 160 acres of mixed operation, 80 acres of wheat on the north and east quarters, now in summer fallow after the late June harvest. 40 acres of pasture on the south and west for the cattle. I started with 22 head, and I am down to 9 now, for reasons I do not need to explain. The lower 20 acres is a low field that floods in wet springs, and I have left it in grass. There is a stone barn from 1931 that is solid to the foundation. There is a machine shed with the combine and the planter and the old grain cart inside. There is a well that draws from a limestone aquifer at 212 feet and has not gone dry in any season I can remember. The well is the most important thing on this property. Everything else can be rebuilt or replaced or done without. The well cannot. It is late July, and the sun is still high enough at 7 in the evening to throw long shadows east from the fence posts and from the old elm at the corner of the yard. I have been watching a cluster of motion in the outer wheat field for 11 minutes. The wheat is in stubble after the harvest, about shin-high on a standing man, and I can see movement at a low angle through it, moving from the west fence toward the drainage ditch line on the south. 3 disturbances, moving together, moving at the pace of people trying to stay low and not be seen. Behind them, at the drainage ditch, something else. 4 or 5 shapes on the south bank of the ditch that were not there an hour ago. I know what the shapes in the ditch are. 3 years ago I would have called them infected, because that was the word the radio used at first, and for a time it was the word I used too. Now I call them dead. Dead is what they are. They have been dead for different amounts of time, and they move at different speeds, depending on how long they have been dead and what condition they are in. The ones in the drainage ditch are ditch dead, which is what I call the ones that drift along waterways. They are drawn by the smell of the steer and by the movement of the 3 people in the outer pasture, and they are coming up the south bank now, moving onto the flat. I have seen this exact thing happen 9 times on this property. I know how it plays out if no one does anything. I get up from the window. I take the marlin. I put my hat on because the sun is still in the western sky, and I do not see well without it at that angle. I go out the side door of the house, not the front door, because the side door puts me against the east wall of the house and out of the direct line of sight from the outer pasture. I go along the east side of the barn, staying close to the wall. The barn is stone, 2 feet thick on the lower courses, and it puts me in shadow. I go to the northwest corner of the barn and look out across the yard toward the outer pasture gate. The 3 people in the field are close now. They are moving fast, low to the ground, staying below the top wire of the fence. 4 dead are on the flat behind them. 1 is already at the fence post on the south corner. I have a rule about strangers. I have had this rule since the second winter, when a group of 6 people came to this gate with a sick man in a wheelbarrow and told me the man had the flu. He did not have the flu. 3 of the 6 had already been exposed. I turned them away at gunpoint and watched them go south down the county road, and I have thought about that night a number of times since then, without coming to a clear conclusion about what else I could have done. What I have concluded is that strangers at the gate in this year are a decision that has to be made in about 30 seconds, and the information available in 30 seconds is almost never enough. So the rule is, they go. No exceptions I have found yet. I have turned away 11 people since last October. 3 of them were in bad shape. I gave them what I could through the gate water, a tin of food, and I watched them go. I do not know what happened to any of them. I get to the water tank at the outer pasture corner and call out across the fence. I do not shout. Out here at evening, a voice carries a quarter mile in still air without raising it. Stop where you are. The 3 people in the pasture stop. They are about 40 feet from me, on the other side of the outer fence. 2 men and a woman, from what I can see in the fading light. One of the men has a pack so loaded it lists him sideways. The woman is smaller than the 2 men, and she is not breathing hard, which tells me she runs distance regularly, or has been doing this long enough that her body adapted. The 4 dead behind them do not stop. They keep coming, crossing the flat from the drainage ditch, slow but not slow enough. The taller of the 2 men puts his hands out to his sides, palms open. We're not looking for trouble. We've got dead right behind us. I look at him, then at the woman, then at the other man, then back at the dead crossing the flat. 60 feet, maybe 65. Turn around and go back the way you came, I say. The taller man shakes his head. There's more back that way. We can't go back. The shorter man, the one with the overloaded pack, is watching the dead over his shoulder. He has a long-handled tool across his back, some kind of pry bar or wrecking bar. He has not said anything yet. Then the woman speaks. 2 words. Just 2 words, and they stop me cold. Walter. That is all. Just my name, in a voice I have not heard in close to 2 years. I look at her. She is standing straight now, not trying to stay low anymore, and she is looking at me across 40 feet of dry pasture grass in the last of the evening light. And the shape of her face and the set of her jaw are things I know. She has her father's jaw, my son Dale's jaw, which means she has my jaw, if I am being honest, from about 40 years ago. Bryn Calloway, my granddaughter. She is 22 years old, and she is alive, and she is standing in my outer pasture, with the dead 45 feet behind her, and closing. I do not let myself stand there. Standing there gets people taken by the dead. Get under the fence, I say. All 3 of you, now. They move. The shorter man drops to his back and rolls under the bottom wire fast, which tells me he has done that before. The taller man does it slower, more careful with the pack. Bryn goes through the gap in the post where the wire has always been a little loose, the gap I have been meaning to fix for 2 years. 20 seconds, and all three of them are on my side of the outer fence. I go to the corner post and take a position with my left shoulder against the wood and bring the marlin up. The four dead are at the fence now, pushing against it. I fire once. The report is flat and loud, and it rings out across the flat and into the wheat stubble and rolls south toward the county road. I fire again, 2 down. The other 2 drift along the fence line toward the gate. Get to the barn, I say, not looking at them. The stone barn, straight across the yard. Go now, and do not stop. I hear them move. I drop one more of the dead at the fence with the 3rd shot. The last one is on the other side of the post from me, grabbing at the wire. I do not fire again. 3 shots is 3 shots and the sound already carried. I take the pitchfork from where I leaned it against the tank before I came out, and I deal with the last one against the fence post and drag it clear of the wire. My hands are steady. I have done this enough times that my hands do not shake anymore. That took a long time to become true. I go across the yard to the barn. Inside the barn, the lantern is already lit. I did not light it. One of them must have found the matches on the shelf by the door, which means one of them knew to look for matches on a shelf by a barn door, which means at least one of them has spent time in barns. I look at the 3 of them in the lantern light. Bryn is standing near the water tank inside the door. She has road dust on her face, and her jacket is torn at the left sleeve, and she has a long scratch on her forearm that is scabbing over. She is looking at me the way she used to look at me when she was a child, and I was telling her something she did not fully believe. The taller man is near the back wall, pack off and on the floor, doing a slow look around the barn the way a man looks at a space when he wants to understand what is in it. The shorter man with the wrecking bar is sitting on the edge of the grain platform, with his elbows on his knees. He is breathing normally. All 3 of them look like they have been walking for a long time. Ferris Odom, the taller man says, and puts out his hand. He is around 35, lean through the shoulders, with the kind of hands that have spent time on engines, the knuckles wide, the skin of the palms thick. He does not smile when he introduces himself. He just says his name and puts out his hand and waits. I shake it. Walter Baines, I say. He nods. I know, he says. Bryn's been talking about this farm for 2 days. He says this without embellishment, just as information. He goes back to looking at the barn. Odette Larch, the smaller woman says from the grain platform. She is 24 or thereabouts, with short, practical hair and a pack that is organized rather than full, everything in it placed, not stuffed. She has a hand-cranked radio on the outside of the pack in a cloth sleeve. She has already taken it out and is looking at the dial. She looks at everything in this barn, the way you look at an inventory. Her eyes go to the tool wall, the fuel can rack, the spare parts shelf, the animal pens. She is assessing what is here. I go to the water barrel near the back pen, and I fill 3 tin cups and set them on the workbench. None of them rush for the water, which means they are not desperate yet. They drink when they want to drink. I stand near the door. Bryn is watching me, and I am not looking at her because if I look at her directly, I will not be able to say what I need to say, which is this. There's space in the barn tonight. Hay in the far pen, which is clean. I'll bring food. Bryn starts to speak. Walter, not now, I say, and I go back to the house. The house is the same as I left it. I do not know what I expected. It is a farmhouse built in the 30s, added onto in the 60s, with a kitchen and front room and 2 bedrooms and a root cellar under the kitchen floor. Ruth's chair is at the table. It is a cane-back chair, with a cushion she recovered in a blue print fabric about 10 years ago, and it is at the table where it has been every evening since the night she died, and I put it there. I set water on the stove propane, still have a partial tank, and I take dried beans from the cellar and the last of the smoked pork shoulder from the hook on the south wall, and I put together a meal. I cut cornbread from the pan I made 2 days ago. When I have the food together, I put it in a covered pot and take it across the yard and leave it outside the barn door and knock twice and go back to the house. I sit at the table. Ruth's chair is across from me. I do not talk to the chair. I used to do that, and I have been trying to do it less. I look at it. Dale's photograph is on the shelf by the door. He is about 30 in that photograph, before Bryn was born, before the years that were hard. He is standing in front of the combine with his hand on the header, and he is squinting into the sun, and he looks exactly like what he was, which was a man who understood this land and intended to work it for the rest of his life. Bryn has his jaw and my stubbornness, according to Ruth, who said this as a caution and not a compliment. I sit at the table for a while, then I get up and go to bed. Morning. I am up before first light, which is something that has not changed in 50 years of farming. The generator comes on at 5:15. I run it for 45 minutes, which is the window that charges the battery bank enough to run the deep well pump for the daily fill without pulling the battery down into the danger range. 62 gallons of diesel left in the outdoor tank. That is the count from last Tuesday, and I have run the generator 6 times since then. I am down to around 54 or 55 gallons. When that tank is empty, there is no generator, and without the generator, there is no electric pump, and we go to the hand pump, which draws from the same aquifer, but at a rate of about 8 gallons per 10 minutes of effort. Sustainable, not comfortable. After the generator, I check the east fence line. This takes about 40 minutes on foot, going corner to corner on the east quarter, looking at post condition, wire tension, and the ground around the base of each post for signs of recent dead activity. There are 3 dead along the east fence this morning, pushed up from the drainage ditch overnight. I carry the machete and the pitchfork, and I deal with each of them the same way, and then drag them away from the fence into the wheat stubble, far enough that the smell does not build against the wire. I have a routine for this, and the routine keeps me from thinking too much about what I am doing. By the time I finish the east line, the sky is full orange to the east, and the air is already warm. When I come back around the northeast corner to the yard, Ferris Odom is already outside. He is at the south corner post of the outer fence, the one I have been meaning to reset for 2 months, and he is pulling the post with the post driver, not fighting it, not guessing at the angle, just working it in clean strokes, the way a man works when he knows the tool in his hands. I stop and watch him from the gate. He does not look up. He found the post driver in the right place, on the left hook of the equipment wall in the machine shed, without asking where it was. He looked for tools and found them in the logical place. Bryn is at the chicken pen before I reach the yard. She is filling the feeder, and she knows where the feed sack is without being told, which she should, because she grew up coming to this farm every summer until she was 17. She knows how this yard is laid out. She holds the pen gate with her elbow while she pours, the way you hold it when you know that particular gate swings left when you let go, because it has swung left since the hinge settled, and only someone who has used it before knows that. She does not look up when I cross the yard. She is working. Odette is on the ground beside the water tank, with the hand-cranked radio open on a cloth in front of her, and a small notebook on her knee. She has the earbuds in, and she is writing things down and scanning the dial in small increments. She writes quickly, in short notations I cannot read from this distance. She does not look up when I pass. I get the sense she is doing the most important thing she knows how to do, and she is going to finish it before she does anything else. I call them all to the yard at 7, and I lay out the rules, not as a welcome, as a condition. Generator runs once a day, 45 minutes. No exceptions for light or comfort, only for the pump fill. The well is the most important thing on this property. You treat it like it is, which means nothing goes into the wellhead area, no debris, no contamination, and the cover goes back on after every use. You do not fire a weapon unless there is no other option. Sound travels a quarter mile in this air on a calm day. Every shot pulls the dead. Every shot. The south pasture is off after dark. That is the drainage corridor, and the dead come through it overnight. The chickens get closed in the inner pen at dusk, every night. The latch goes down, every time. Not most times, every time. Ferris stands with his arms folded and nods to each item, not a yes man's nod, a listening nod, the kind that means he is filing each rule into a place in his head where it will be used. Odette writes 2 things in the notebook, and I wonder if she is writing my rules or writing something else. Bryn watches me. She does not nod. She watches my face the whole time, and when I finish, she says, "Are we staying?" I look at the south fence line for a second, and then back at her. "I haven't decided," I say, and I go to check the water pump housing, which has had a crack in it for 6 months that I have been sealing with marine epoxy and prayer. Ferris finds me at the pump housing an hour later. He looks at the crack without me pointing it out. He looks at the epoxy patching. He runs his finger along the seam. He goes back to the machine shed and comes back with a piece of hose clamp stock, a drill, and 2 stainless bolts. He does the job properly in 40 minutes. The crack is bridged and clamped, and when I run the pump that afternoon, the seal holds without weeping. 6 months I have been nursing that crack. I tell myself I would have fixed it properly eventually, and I know that is not true. I would have run it on the epoxy patch until it failed completely. That evening, Odette shows me what she has been listening to. She opens the notebook and reads from it. A signal on a shortwave frequency she found around noon, about 8 miles north of here at the Halverson spread. The signal was a man's voice calling out an inventory of a property, water source, livestock, fuel quantity, grain stores. It was not a distress call. It was a report. She thinks someone was relaying the information back to a group, and she thinks that group was the same people who went through the Decker property 2 weeks ago. I ask her what she knows about the Decker place. She and Ferris exchange a look, and Bryn turns slightly toward the window, and Ferris says, "That's why we came this way." He explains it in short sentences. A roving crew, at least 12 to 15 people, moving north to south through the county corridor. They locate isolated farms using either scouting or the absence of smoke from burned properties. They arrive in force, strip everything that is useful, seed stock, livestock, diesel, generators, working equipment, and then burn the structures, not for warmth, to deny the buildings to anyone else. They are not surviving. They are consolidating. Bryn says, "The Decker place has been dark for 2 weeks. We saw the smoke from 10 miles out. I know the Decker place. I know Len Decker. I have not spoken to him since the 2nd year, and I have watched the smoke on the horizon without letting myself think about what it meant. On the 5th morning, I take Ferris to the Decker place. I take the Kawasaki utility vehicle down the South County Road, both of us in the cab with the Marlin and the 12 gauge. 3 miles south and then east on the section road to the Decker gate. I have been down this road maybe 15 times since the start of everything, and each time there is something different along it. A vehicle abandoned in the ditch, a stretch of fence pushed flat, a section of road that has started to go back to gravel from lack of maintenance. Today there is a pair of boots sitting on the center line, placed neatly side by side, which is the kind of thing you stop wondering about after a while. The Decker farmhouse is gone to foundation. The stone chimney is standing on one corner of the basement walls, and that is all. The barn is standing, but both doors have been burned off their hinges, and the inside is swept clear, not looted in haste, but emptied carefully. Every bin lifted and taken, every piece of equipment removed or disabled. The concrete floor has scorch marks where something was burned in place. Ferris walks the barn floor slowly, looking at the ground. He finds bolt patterns in the concrete, where equipment was anchored. He finds tire marks in the dust near the north end that he photographs in his mind for a while before he says anything. 2 heavy trucks. One of them is a flatbed based on the outer wheel spacing. The other is narrower, a pickup or a medium duty. He measures the track width with his arm span and looks at where the turn radius ended. They came in through the north gate and turned around in the barnyard. They knew the layout before they came in. I look at the north gate. The padlock hasp has been cut, not broken. Cut with bolt cutters, clean and precise. Someone had the right tool and knew to bring it. Len Decker kept his padlock on the north gate because the north gate was closest to the county road. Anyone who knew the property knew that. I find Len near the well. He is not recent. He has been there since at least the same week the smoke went up. He has turned. I put him down with the machete, and I do not say anything while I do it, because there is nothing to say that would help. Len Decker was 71 years old, and he ran a good clean farm, and he was difficult to like and easy to respect, and now he is in the dry grass beside his well. I drag him to the edge of the property and leave him there. The proper thing would be to bury him, but I did not bring a shovel, and the ground is iron hard in July, and there is no time. On the drive back, Ferris says, they had time here. This wasn't a quick job. Maybe a full day, maybe 2. I keep my eyes on the road. Len was alone. It wouldn't have made much difference either way. Ferris says, not against that number. I do not answer that. We drive back in quiet, and I think about the north gate padlock, cut clean, and I think about my own north gate, which has a chain and a lock, and which anyone who has been watching this property for more than one day would already know the details of. 7 days after Bryn and the others arrived, at around 4 in the afternoon, a pickup and a flatbed truck pull into my lane. I am on the porch. The marlin is in my hands. Ferris is in the barn with the 12 gauge. I told him this morning before breakfast, in a short conversation by the water tank, that if a vehicle pulled into the lane, he was to take the 12 gauge to the barn's east window without showing himself. He was already there before the trucks reached the outer gate. 4 men get out of the pickup. The man from the passenger seat walks to the outer gate alone. He is big across the shoulders, with a beard trimmed short and a button-down shirt that has been kept in better condition than most men manage 3 years into this. He walks with the deliberate pace of a man who expects to reach the place he is walking toward without being stopped. He carries no weapon, I can see. He gets to the gate and stops and looks at the yard and then at me on the porch. Afternoon, he says. Nice operation you've got here. Gate's closed, I say. I can see that. He puts both hands on the top rail of the gate, thumbs hooked over it, and looks at the yard the way Odette looked at the barn on the first night with inventory eyes. We've been working with a few properties in the area, mutual support arrangement. The Decker place is 3 miles south, I say. You could ask Len Decker about his arrangement with you. His expression does not change. He looks at the equipment shed, where the combine is parked. He looks at the cattle visible in the south pasture. He looks at the generator next to the fuel tank. Nice cattle operation, he says. What are you running? 8 head? 9? Enough, I say. What's the fuel situation like? He asks. Diesel tank over there looks like it's got some room in it. I bring the marlin up level, pointing at the gate post near his left shoulder. Not at him, at the wood beside him. He looks at the barrel for a moment. He does not step back. You've got 30 seconds, I say. No need for that, he says. He lifts both hands off the gate, palms out, slow and deliberate. We're going. He backs up 1 step and then turns and walks back to the pickup without hurrying. He looks at the yard 1 more time before he gets in. You've done a real nice job here, friend, he calls out. Real nice. The trucks pull out of the lane and turn south on the county road, and the dust settles. I go to the barn. Ferris lowers the 12 gauge. I counted 4 in the pickup and 2 in the flatbed cab, he says. 6 visible, I say. The flatbed bed had a tarp, Ferris says. I couldn't see under it. Could be equipment. Could be people. I think about that. Odette comes to the barn door. She has the notebook. I picked up a transmission this morning before they arrived. Shortwave, military-style frequency. 2 voices. One was listing a location, and the other was saying, tomorrow, or after. I look at the notebook. Did they name this property? They named a property to the north. The Halverson spread. They said inventory complete and movement south. That means they are done at Halverson's, I say, and south from there is us. That evening I count what we have. 114 rounds of 30-30 ammunition, 38 12-gauge shells, mixed bird and buck, half a brick of 22 long rifle, the machete, the pitchfork, the nail bat, 2 hog snares, the Kawasaki utility vehicle, the combine in the machine shed, 212 feet of deep well on a limestone aquifer that is not going to move, and 4 people, 2 of whom I have known for 8 days. I lay this out at the kitchen table, and Ferris and Bryn and Odette sit across from me, and I look at all of it for a while before I say anything. The lower field, I say to Ferris. You said the irrigation outlet on the west side, he nods. I looked at it this afternoon. The valve is seized from disuse, but the body is intact. Give me 2 hours tomorrow morning and the right penetrating oil, and it'll turn. If we flood the lower field, we create a mud barrier on the south approach. No vehicle comes through 60 yards of good black clay mud that's had 24 hours of water on it. Ferris, what about foot traffic? Slow, very slow. A man on foot in that mud is not going anywhere fast, and he knows it. Bryn, that covers the south. What about the East Road approach? That's the Wheatfield access track. Single lane, wire gate. It's the long way around. But it's passable, she says. Yes, it's passable, Odette. The woman I spoke to on the radio, before we got here, she said the group that hit her farm near Lyons came in from 2 sides, south and east, at around 3 in the morning. I look at her notebook. She showed me the notation 2 days ago. She got out because her dog woke her, Odette says. She was gone before they reached the house. Where is she now? Bryn asks. She didn't say, Odette says. A silence settles. Then I start talking about the barn, the gate, and the combine. The next 2 days are nothing but work. I have not worked this hard since the summer I was 55, and I put the new roof on the barn alone because I could not afford help, and Ruth stood at the base of the ladder every day with her hands on her hips, asking me what I thought I was doing. Ferris gets the irrigation valve turning on the first morning, using the penetrating oil from the maintenance locker and a length of pipe for leverage. When the valve breaks loose, it is a moment I hear across the yard. He opens it slowly and lets the water move into the lower field from the west side, letting it spread south and east without channeling. By the end of the second day, the south approach from the county road is ankle-deep mud for the first 30 yards past the south fence gate and boot-sucking clay beyond. That for another 30. Ferris goes out and walks it to test it. He comes back with mud to the knee on his right leg from where he stepped wrong. No truck gets through that, he says. Not without a chain and something to pull from. They'd have to drive around, I say. The east approach, which is the wheat track. Yes. Bryn fortifies the cellar access from inside the house. She moves the heaviest supplies down and creates a secondary stock in the barn on the high platform. She makes a list of every item and its location, and she makes 2 copies of the list on the same notebook paper and gives one to me and keeps one in her jacket pocket. I look at the list and I fold it and put it in my shirt pocket. It is the most organized accounting of what is on this property that has existed since Ruth kept the farm ledger in the first 20 years of our marriage. Ruth had a system. I have been running on memory for 3 years, and the list makes me realize how much I have lost track of. I move the combine from the machine shed to the lane between the barn and the outer gate on the second afternoon. I start it first and let it run in the shed for 5 minutes to check the sound and the temperature and the belt tension. Ferris is under the front end with a light while it runs, looking at the drive system. He tells me the inner belt on the header drive is cracking on the back face. I shut it down, and we replace the belt with the spare set in the workshop parts bin. It takes us until dark. When we roll the combine out to the lane and park it there in the dark, it fills the lane from fence to fence, 8 feet tall, 12 feet wide at the header, old and red and heavy as anything on this property. Odette hangs tin cans on the outer fence wire at 10-foot intervals on the south and east sides. She uses baling wire and pieces of stone from the driveway inside each can, so they rattle in a light wind and rattle differently and louder when something pushes the wire. This is not an alarm system. It is a 3-second warning, and 3 seconds is worth having. She does the whole south fence in one afternoon without being asked. On the second evening of fortifying, Ferris and I are setting a new crossbar on the east gate. We are working by hand in the last light, no lantern, so the light does not carry. We work for a while without speaking. Then Ferris says, "You were going to turn us away when we came through the pasture." "Yes," I say. "You still would have if this wasn't happening." "Probably," I say. I set the bolt and tighten it. Ferris holds the bar while I work. "How many times have you sent people away?" he asks. 11, I say. "Since October." He does not say anything to that for a while. Then, "How many of them were in bad shape?" 3, I say. maybe 4, depending on how you define it. We work for a while. I gave them water, I say, through the gate. Ferris does not respond. You figured out a way to not have to decide, he says eventually. Not as an accusation. As an observation. Yes, I say. He tests the crossbar with both hands, pushing side to side. It is solid. He stands back and looks at the gate. Seems like the right call when you're alone, he says. Not sure it's the right call now. I know, I say. That is all either of us says about it. We go back to the barn. Bryn brings me coffee the next morning. Real coffee, from a tin she has been carrying. One of those small flat cans of the pre-ground variety. She sets it on the porch railing while I am watching the south fence, and she walks away without saying anything about it. I drink it at the window, and I start talking to her in the way I have not talked to anyone on this property in 8 months. Not about feelings, about systems. I take her through the generator schedule and the battery bank gauge and what the numbers mean in different seasons. I show her where the hand pump primes in winter and what to do if it freezes in the drop pipe. I walk her through the hog snare positions and the directions the drainage flows. She asks questions that are practical and specific. Not where do I keep my personal things or how do I feel about this. Questions like, what is the maximum draw on the battery bank before we damage the cells? How many gallons does the cattle tank hold? And how long does it take to refill by hand pump? What is the depth to water in November compared to July? She has been surviving on her own terms for 3 years. She does not need comfort from me. She needs operating information. I give it to her. The well is everything. I tell her, if you lose the well, you leave. No water in July in Kansas means you go. You do not try to hold out. She looks at me. Where would we go? I don't know, I say, but you go. She is quiet for a moment. What about you? She asks. I look at the property, at the fence line and the barn and the elm at the northeast corner, and the flat land going out to the horizon in all directions. I was born here, I say, but I won't spend your lives on a well. On the 3rd day after Colton Hare's visit, Odette comes to find me at the south fence while I am doing the morning check. She has the notebook, and her expression is the one she has when the radio has given her something she did not want to hear. They transmitted again. Early this morning, about 4:40. I was up. What did they say? They said Halverson finished. They said south next. She pauses. There was a third voice on the channel. It didn't respond to the others. It was just listening. But I heard it once when there was static, a different radio background sound. They have at least 3 radio units. 3 radios means organization. It means they are splitting forces and communicating between them. I go out to the lower field that morning and check the mud. I walk the north edge of the wet area where the ground is still firm, and I look south. The mud is good, dark and thick, the kind that pulls your boot off if you step wrong. The south gate is at the far edge of the mud zone, and beyond the gate, the county road runs straight south. If they come from the south, they come down that road. If they try to drive through, the mud stops them inside the gate. If they come on foot through the mud, they are slow and loud and committed. That is the south approach. The east approach is the wheat track, single lane, wire gate, passable. I check the combine. I start it and let it idle for 10 minutes in the lane. The sound carries across the flat. The diesel knock of a big machine is not subtle at any hour, let alone in still morning air. I need to know it will start on the first or second try in the dark. On the first try, it catches in 3 seconds of cranking. I let it idle, check the temperature gauge, run the header up and down once, and shut it down. The sound rolls south and fades. I sit in the cab for a moment after the engine stops. 9 dead are in the south drainage ditch today, more than usual. The shots the first night Bryn arrived pulled some of them this way, and they have been accumulating since. I look at the ditch, and I look at the south gate, and I look at the combine sitting in the lane, and I begin to understand what I want to do. I bring Ferris to the south gate before supper. I explain it standing there by the gate post, looking south down the county road. If they come from the south, they come down this road. The mud stops their vehicles inside the gate if they get that far. But we don't have the numbers for a conventional defense. 4 people against 15 or more means we need something that changes the terms. The dead in the drainage ditch are a resource I have been thinking about. If I take the combine south and run it parallel to the ditch, I say, the engine noise pulls the dead up out of the ditch and moves them onto the flat. If the crew is already coming up the south road, Ferris finishes it. The dead are between them and the gate. Yes, and between them and me, which means the combines steal on one side and the dead on the other, and they have to deal with both. Ferris is quiet for a moment. And the east gate? We look at each other. I was thinking you, I say. He looks at the east gate from here, which is not directly visible, but he knows the distance and the angles. How many on the east side? I don't know, I say. That's the part I don't know. But if they split their crew, you'd have the 12 gauge and the 22. You hold until the dead clear the south road, and I can bring the combine back. He looks at the east gate direction again. He looks at me. Okay, he says. I'm not going to tell you it's a safe position, I say. No, he says. You're not. He walks back to the barn. I stand at the south gate for a while and look at the drainage ditch and count what I can see moving in it. They come at 2:15 in the morning. Odette is on top of the water tank with no radio, just her ears and eyes, because radios can squawk at the wrong second. She signals the barn with the flashlight at 2:13, 1 long flash, 1 short. That is the signal for vehicles on the south road. I am already moving before the second flash fades. I am in the machine shed lane in my work boots and jacket, with the marlin slung and the combine keys in my hand. Ferris is behind me. He peels off at the east gate path without a word, and I hear his boots on the dry ground going east, and then I do not hear them anymore. The combine starts on the 3rd second of cranking. 1 second of silence when I first turn the key, then it catches, and the diesel knock fills the lane and the yard, and rolls across the flat like something waking up. There is nothing subtle about a combine engine. I do not try to be quiet. Quiet is not the plan. I pull the combine out of the lane through the outer gate. Bryn has opened it and is stepping back against the fence and into the south pasture lane, moving without lights. The pasture lane runs parallel to the drainage ditch for about 150 meters and then curves west to the south gate. I go south along the lane, keeping the ditch on my left at about 40 meters distance. The dead in the ditch are already responding to the engine. I can see them in the ambient light. There is a 3/4 moon and no cloud, and the flat Kansas sky gives enough light to see movement at 30 meters. 6, 7, 8 shapes, climbing out of the ditch and onto the mud flat, turning toward the combine engine sound. They are slow in the mud. Their feet sink and pull, and they move at maybe a third of normal walking pace. But they are moving, and they are spread across the flat between the lane and the south fence, which means anyone coming north from the south gate will have to pass through them or around them. I can hear the trucks on the south road now. 2 sets of headlights, stopped at the outer south fence. They are cutting the wire. I can hear the snips clearly in the still air. Metal on metal, the sound of bolt cutters taking apart fence wire post by post. They are making a gap wide enough to drive through. Someone knows how to do this quickly. 4 cuts, maybe 5, and I hear the wire ping and relax. Then footsteps on hard road. Multiple sets. Muzzle flash from the east, from the direction of the east gate. 1 shot, a pause of 4 or 5 seconds, then 2 more. That is the 12 gauge. Ferris. The distance and the flat air make the shots crisp and close sounding, though the east gate is 300 meters from where I am sitting. 1 shot, then 2, then nothing. I keep driving the combine south along the lane. I cut the wheel slightly right to angle the nose toward the south fence gap where the crew is coming through. I slow to a crawl. I fire the Marlin out the right side window. 1 shot, aimed at the fence post near the gap, not at people, at the wood, to make sound and muzzle flash. The shot is loud against the quiet, and it rings across the mud flat, and I see the dead on the flat turn their heads toward the sound. They are between me and the south fence gap now, 20-odd meters of slow-moving dead on mud. And I see two figures on the other side of the gap stop moving when the dead start turning toward them. Two figures. Only two on the south side. I look for the others, and there are no others. Two men have come through the south gap, and the rest of the crew is not here. I look toward the east gate direction. The two men on the south side are stopped, looking at the dead between them and the combine, not moving. I fire the Marlin again, second shot, to hold their attention on the south side. And then from the east gate direction I hear the 12-gauge fire twice more. And then I hear a different gun, a pistol, smaller report, one shot. And then silence from the east gate direction. I understand what I have done wrong. I understand it in the second after the pistol shot and the silence. They split 9 or 10 to the east and 2 to the south, and I put Ferris at the east gate with the 12-gauge because I thought the split would be closer to even. I thought from the visible count at the gate that they had 14 or 15 total, and I split that in my head and put the harder man at the east gate, and I was wrong about the split. The south was the feint. The east was the push, and now the east gate is silent. I cannot stop now. If I stop and leave the combine, the two men on the south side move through the dead slowly, with difficulty. But they move, and then they are in the outer yard, and between me and the barn where Bryn and Odette are. So I keep driving. I drive the combine forward along the lane, slow, angling toward the south fence gap. The dead on the mud, flat part around the combine header. Some of them touch the header, and I feel the resistance through the controls, but the machine is heavy, and it does not slow. I fire the Marlin a third time as the combine reaches the south fence. The two men run. They go south down the county road at a full sprint, away from the dead, away from the machine, away from the muzzle flash. They do not stop at the trucks. They run past the trucks and keep going south, and the sound of their footsteps fades. I pull the combine back through the gap in the south fence and back along the lane to the outer yard. I shut the engine down. The silence after a combine engine is profound. My ears ring slightly from the Marlin. I get down from the cab. I pick up the Marlin and check the lever and walk east across the yard toward the east gate path. I walk fast. I do not run because running in the dark on uneven ground in work boots is how you turn an ankle, and I cannot afford that now. The east gate path is the narrow track along the east fence that runs from the yard to the wheat field. Access gate. It is about 300 meters. I go along the fence in the dark, and I see the gate ahead, and I see shapes on the ground in the track, and I see one shape against the gate post. 3 men down in the wheat track, one against the post. Ferris is against the post, back to the wood, the 12-gauge across his legs. The 22 is on the ground at his right side. He is sitting, and he is looking up at the sky, and he is still breathing. I get down beside him. The wound is on the left side below the ribs. The entry point is visible. I put my hand against it, and he does not react to the pressure, which tells me something I do not want to know. How many came south? He asks. His voice is even. 2. They ran. I got 3 on this side before the 4th one. Don't talk, I say. 9 came east, he says. At least 9. I know, I say. I made the call wrong. He does not respond to that. He looks at the gate post above him. Where's the rest of them? I look out into the dark wheat field. 2 shapes moving east at a run, far out, almost to the section road. Running, I say. The combine worked, he says. Yes, I say. Good, he says. I say, I put you here with too few. I didn't count them right. Ferris does not answer. His breathing has changed from the kind that is controlled to the kind that is not. I stay beside him with my hand on the wound, and I know it is not helping, and I keep it there anyway. Bryn arrives at a run 3 minutes later, coming east from the yard, with the lantern. She holds the lantern up, and she sees Ferris, and she stops running, and she stands still for a moment, and then she comes forward and crouches on the other side of him. He is gone before the sky starts to lighten in the east. Bryn and I go back to the yard. Neither of us says anything. Odette meets us at the barn door. She has already assessed the situation from the sounds of the night, and her face shows that she knows. She hands Bryn a cup of water. The three of us stand in the yard in the first grey of the morning, and the land is still and quiet, and the drainage ditch is empty of movement for the first time in days. The three men who went down at the east gate have not turned. They are recent dead, and they will eventually turn, but not yet. I drag them to the south mud flat and leave them at the edge of the mud. The mud will slow anyone who comes to retrieve them, if anyone comes. I do not have the energy or the purpose to do anything more with them, and they did not earn a careful treatment from me. The 8 dead from the drainage ditch that are now scattered across the south mud flat and the lane are different. These I have to burn before noon. The dead in volume near a water source foul the soil and eventually the groundwater if they are not removed. I learned this the hard way in the second year. I take the diesel can from the Kawasaki utility vehicle and I spend the morning burning the dead from the drainage ditch where they have come to rest on the south flat. Bryn helps. She does not ask if she should. She picks up the other end and we move each one to the burn pile and she steps back when I light it. The smoke goes straight up in the still morning air. I use diesel only where I have to get the burn started. I do not waste more than half a gallon total. By noon it is done, and the ash is raked into the mud, where it will break down, and the spring line below the south field is not compromised. Odette checks the south fence in the afternoon. 37 meters of wire cut or torn from the assault at the south gap, where the crew cut through. She gives me the count and the post positions, and I spend 4 hours pulling new wire from the supply shed and resetting the damaged posts and closing the gap. The post driver is in the machine shed where it always is. Ferris put it back there after he used it to reset the south corner post on the first morning he was here. It is in the right place. I use it to reset 3 posts, and I do not think about who showed me where it was because I already knew where it was. But I think about what he did with it in the first morning before anyone asked him to. We bury Ferris Odom the next morning under the elm at the northeast corner. The ground there is in the shade of the elm for the morning hours, and it is the best ground on the property, the darkest soil, the kind of ground that has had years of leaf fall on it. I dig the grave myself with the long-handled spade, and it takes most of the morning because I am 67 years old, and the ground is hard 6 inches down. Bryn and Odette help with the last 2 feet. We do it without speaking much. Bryn reads from the small book she has been carrying since I first saw her, something I do not recognize, and Odette stands with her head down, and I stand with my hat off and the sun coming over the east wheat field onto the yard. After the grave, I go to the workshop, and I take a length of square steel tube, and I cut it to post height on the angle grinder, and I weld a crossbar to it, and I weld a plate to the crossbar, and with a punch and a hammer, I stamp letters into the plate. Ferris Odom, 35 years, his last name in full. His age as best Bryn knew it. I set the post in a hole next to the grave and fill it with concrete from the workshop bag and let it cure overnight. In the morning, I go back and check the post, and it is solid. It will be there a long time. 3 days after the assault, Colton Hare comes to the south gate alone, on foot. No vehicles, no group, nothing in his hands that I can see at this distance. I watch him come up the south road from the window for about 4 minutes before I take the Marlin and go to the south gate. He looks different from the first time. The button-down shirt is gone. He has a cut above his left eye that is healing dirty. His jacket sleeve on the right side has been cut away, which usually means a wound underneath. He stops at the gate and puts both hands on the top rail. "I'm not armed," he says. "Then you're just stupid," I say. He almost smiles at that. "We lost 6 people in that field the other night," he says. 3 in the mud on the south, 2 at your east gate, 1 in the drainage ditch that I'm not going to explain. He looks at the gate between us. I want to know if there's a way to not do this again. I look at him for a long time. "You burned Lendecker's farm," I say. He holds my look. "Yes." "Was Len alive when you arrived?" I ask. He does not flinch away from the question. He was at the start, he says. I close my eyes for 1 second. I open them. Get off my lane, I say. Get south. Go far south. If I see you or anyone working with you on this road again, I will not wait for a conversation. He stands at the gate. He looks at the yard, at the elm at the northeast corner, at the property. Fair enough, he says. He turns and walks south down the county road. He does not look back. I watch the road until he rounds the bend near the old windmill stand and disappears. Then I go back to the barn and start on the south fence repair because it needs another hour of work before it will hold in a strong wind. The week after the assault, I begin teaching everything. Not in a single sitting. In work. Bryn does the task, and I explain what to look for while she does it, what the failure condition looks like, what to do before a failure becomes a loss. The generator, oil level check before every start, the exhaust color that means the rings are wearing, the sound that means the fuel injector is dirty, the water pump, the draw sound when the water table drops in late summer, the knock that means the pump has lost prime, the pressure reading that means the storage tank is full. I go through each system the way I have run it for 31 years, and she listens and asks the right questions, and some of it she already knows from the summers she spent here as a girl. The combine, the sequence for the cold morning start that does not grind the starter, the header float adjustment for different ground conditions, the grain tank sensor that sticks in damp weather and has to be cleared by hand, the fencing, which posts are limestone set from the original perimeter and will be solid for another 20 years, and which are the steel pipe posts I put in myself in the 90s that are starting to rust at the soil line and will need replacing in the next 5 years. The animals, which of the 9 remaining cattle has the temperament issue that requires the south pen gate to always be latched from outside, which of the laying hens is beginning to fall off production, and what that means for the flock as winter approaches. Odette runs the radio at consistent times, now 6 in the morning and 6 in the evening, with a brief scan at noon if the weather is clear. She has picked up 2 new signals in the week after the assault. One is faint and moving a mobile unit somewhere west of the county, possibly on the highway. The other is the signal she has been hearing from the south, which is clearer now and more regular in its schedule. It is broadcasting from what sounds like an organized settlement around 50 or 60 miles south of us. They list skills wanted, she says to me one morning while I am splitting wood for the stove. Medical, mechanical, agricultural. They repeat the list every broadcast. I stop splitting and look at the axe handle. How many people? I ask. 63, last broadcast. 35 acres in production. I go back to splitting. 63 people and 35 acres in production is a serious settlement. That is not a camp. That is a community with structure and intention, and probably a water source. Keep listening, I say. Don't respond yet. I think about it for 2 days. On the 3rd day, I go to Odette and say, tell them we have seed wheat and sorghum adapted to this soil type, and we'd share a portion for the right trade. She looks at her notebook. What trade? Tell them we lost someone who knew diesel engines, and we could use another. She writes it down. She looks at me. Okay, she says. She goes to work on the transmission. That night I sit at the table. Ruth's chair is across from me. I look at it. I say, 3 of them now. Bryn and a young woman named Odette. And Ferris, who I put in the wrong place, and I have to live with that. I sit for a while. Bryn has your way of organizing things, lists and systems. She had the cellar counted and categorized inside the first 3 days. Another pause. She has Dale's jaw. I look at the chair for a while longer. Then I get up and go to the window and look out at the dark yard and the elm at the northeast corner, where there is now a steel marker in the ground. The elm is old enough to outlast it. That is fine. That is the right order of things. August comes in hot and dry. The winter wheat has been harvested, and the north field is in stubble, and we have a portion of the grain in the barn, and a portion in the cellar, and Bryn has the ledger, a real ledger, found in the desk drawer that I had not opened since Ruth last used it, with every quantity written in ink. She added a column for projected consumption per week. She added a second column for what can be produced in season versus what is a fixed store. I look at the ledger one evening, and I say nothing for a long time, and then I say, "Your grandmother kept one of those." "Bryn, I know. I found her old one in the same drawer." She keeps writing. Odette gets a response from the Great Bend settlement. The exchange takes 3 sessions over as many days. Short transmissions, careful language, neither side giving location specifics until the trust builds. By the 3rd session, they have exchanged enough that Odette is confident in the contact. The settlement is led by a woman named Geraldine Cross, former hospital nurse, who has kept the settlement organized around a water source and a large grain elevator that survived intact. They have 63 people. They have a working doctor, a former veterinarian who has expanded into human medicine by necessity. They need seed adapted to the local soil. They have, in fact, a diesel mechanic, a man named True Saavedra from Pratt, who came to the settlement in the 2nd year. "Walter, tell them we can send seed in the spring if they send Saavedra here for 2 weeks to look at the equipment." Odette relays this. The response comes in 2 hours. Agreed. Tell them we may have more to discuss after that. She looks at me. "More? If they're serious," I say. "We'll know more after we meet one of their people face to face." She nods and makes the transmission. I go back to the south fence, which still needs work on the west post. In September, I reduce the herd by 2 animals. I do not like this, but the winter feed calculation does not work with 9 cattle and 3 people on what we have in store. 7 is the right number for the feed on hand, and the hay I can cut before the freeze. I process the 2 animals over 2 days, working with Bryn, and I find that she knows this work. She grew up watching it, and she does not look away from any part of it. We preserve everything that can be preserved, and the seller gains a significant store from the work. I make a note in the ledger. 7 head, reduced for winter, September, year 3. The combine header needs additional work after the south fence incident. The night I drove it through the fence gap and across the mud flat did some damage to the right side reel that I have been putting off. I spend 3 days on it in late September, working through the stiff joints in my hands that arrive every morning now with the colder air. My hands have been stiff in the morning for about 6 years, and they loosen after an hour of work, but the first hour is slow. I work through it. By the 3rd day, the header reel is repaired, and the combine is back in the machine shed properly, and I cover the header with the old canvas tarp and check all the fluid levels for winter storage. On a Saturday, in late September, I know it is Saturday because the calendar says 208, and I started on a Sunday in January of year 1, which makes this the 208th day of this year, which is a Saturday I sit down with Bryn and Odette at the kitchen table. I have a sheet of notebook paper in front of me that I have filled on both sides in my handwriting. The deed information, the well-logged data depth, static level in different seasons, pump specifications, the fuel inventory as of this morning, the seed bin contents and species and germination age, the tool inventory, the fence post materials and which are which, the animal records going back 2 years. I slide it across to Bryn. She looks at it without touching it for a moment. "This is everything that matters on paper," I say. "The rest of it you'll learn by doing it wrong once and correcting it. That's how I learned most of it." She looks at me. "I'm not taking your farm," she says. "You're not taking it," I say. "I'm telling you how it runs because you're the one who's going to run it. I am still here. But I am 67, and I have been doing this alone for 8 months, and I am not going to pretend I can do it alone for another 8. She does not say anything. Odette looks at the window. "Ferris was worth keeping," I say. "He proved that in the first morning when he found the post driver without asking. That was my error not making the call sooner." I stand up. "That's also in the paper. You take in real help when the help is real. You do not wait for a threat to make it obvious." I pick up the marlin from the door peg. I've got the west fence to look at. I go outside. The door does not close loud. I have oiled that hinge this season. Things should work the way they were built to work. It is the last week of October now. The cottonwoods along the drainage ditch have gone yellow, and about half the leaves are on the ground. The air in the mornings has the flat cold to it that means winter in 2 to 3 weeks. I know this air. I have known it for 60 years of Kansas Falls. It comes in from the northwest, and it is not wind exactly. It is more like the air getting heavier, pressing down, the sky going from the high blue of summer to something lower and grayer that means business. I am at the north corner of the property at first light with the marlin, not because I saw anything, because this is where I go at first light. 3 years of walking this perimeter in the morning has worn a path in my thinking the way it has worn one in the ground, and I go through it the same way every day. North corner to east corner south to the drainage ditch line, west along the ditch, north along the west fence, back to the yard. 40 minutes on a good morning. Bryn comes out of the house at 6:15. I can see her from the north corner, a small figure in the grey morning moving across the yard. She goes to the generator first, does the oil check and the fuel gauge without starting it yet, then to the chicken pen, then to the well, where she runs the hand pump through a short cycle to check the draw, the way I showed her. She does not look toward the north corner where I am standing. She knows I am there. She does not need to confirm it. Odette is on the water tank with the radio before the sun clears the east horizon. She does this every morning now. She has a routine for the scan low frequencies first, then up through the shortwave band, then back down. She writes what she hears in the notebook with the time and the frequency. She has 12 days of logs in that notebook now, and she has told me that the pattern of what is broadcasting and when tells her things about who is out there and how organized they are. I believe her. I have seen what she finds. 3 dead come down the south road at about 7 in the morning. They are moving at something close to a full walking pace, which means they are recent. Recent ones are more alert than the long dead, more responsive to sound and movement, faster. They hit the outer south fence wire at the gate and stop and push against it. The tin cans on the wire rattle. I go down the east fence line, approach the gate from the inside, and deal with all 3 of them through the wire, working quickly and without noise. I drag them clear of the fence and go back up the lane. The hand pump at the yard gives me a good wash. I go inside and make coffee from the chicory root that Bryn has been drying and grinding since she found the plants along the fence line in late summer. It is not real coffee. I drank the last of the real coffee in a single cup she set on the porch railing 3 weeks ago. The chicory is bitter and close and adequate. I drink it at the table and I read through the supply ledger and make a note in the margin about the diesel line to the generator that I want to check before the temperature drops below freezing, because diesel thickens in cold, and a line blockage is a bad thing to find on a January morning when the battery bank is low. I finish the coffee. I look at Ruth's chair. I do not say anything to it today. Some mornings I do, and some I do not, and today is a quiet morning for it. The chair is there, and it has been there, and it will be there, and that is enough. I fold the ledger note and put it on the counter where I will find it later. I put my hat on and take the marlin from the door peg. The land is still mine in the sense that I am the one standing on it with a rifle and the knowledge of how every system under it and above it works. But it has not been mine in the other sense, the sense I was running it on for the first 8 months alone. Since the night Bryn came through the outer pasture, with Ferris and Odette behind her, and the dead trailing from the ditch. In the old sense, I was keeping it for Ruth and Dale, and a version of things that was not going to come back. In the new sense, I am keeping it for the people on it now, for the seed that goes south to Great Bend in the spring, for the contact with true Saavedra who will come and look at the equipment and know things about the combine and the generator that I cannot know anymore through these stiff morning hands alone. I walk to the barn. The door swings on the good hinge. I fixed the bad one in August. Finally, the inside is organized in the way Bryn organized it, which is different from the way I had it, and better in 3 or 4 clear ways that I would not admit to her directly. The tool wall is sorted by type and size. The spare parts are labeled. The supply platform has the winter inventory in clear order with the dates marked in black pen. It is the kind of order that tells you someone intends to be here for a long time and intends to know what is here when she needs it. I take the tool list from the board where Bryn posted it, and I walk through the workshop checking off what is present and what needs to be sharpened or oiled before it gets cold. The machete, the pitchfork, the post driver, the splitting axe, the hand saw, the pipe wrench, all of them in the right place. I check them off one at a time, and I take the ones that need sharpening to the bench grinder, and I do that work and I put them back. This takes about 40 minutes. When I come out of the workshop, Bryn is at the cattle pen on the south side of the barn, checking the water trough. She has the temperature gauge from the workshop. I showed her this 2 weeks ago, that the trough needs to stay above a minimum temperature once the night air goes below freezing or the float valve ices. She reads it, writes the number in the small notebook she carries now, and goes to the south pen gate, which she latches from the outside the right way. Every time. She has not been told twice about anything. The elm at the northeast corner of the yard is the oldest thing on this property. My grandfather planted it as a seedling in 1923, and it has been there for the entire span of what this farm has been. The steel marker I set in the ground beneath it last month stands at the base of the north root line. I can read the name from here. Ferris Odom, 35 years. The elm will keep growing long after the steel weathers. That is the right order of things, and I am at peace with it, in the way you can be at peace with something that was your error without being fully at peace with the error itself. Those are two different things, and I know the difference now. I pick up the tool list and the pencil, and I go back to the workshop door, and I write down the diesel line inspection for next week and the combine fluid check for before. The first freeze and the fence post replacements on the northwest corner that need to happen before the ground gets hard. There is work to do for the next 3 weeks without stopping, the same as there has been work to do for every week of the past 3 years. The nature of the work has changed. In the first year it was survival work. Stay alive, stay on the land, do not get taken by the dead or the winter. In the second year it was maintenance work. Hold what you have, keep the systems running, do not let things slip. Now it is building work, which is something I had given up on. I put the pencil behind my ear. I put the tool list in my shirt pocket next to the supply ledger note. I walk out of the barn into the October morning, which is cold and still and very flat and very wide. Odette is coming down from the water tank with the radio and the notebook. She holds up 2 fingers as she passes 2 new signals this morning. I will get the report later. Bryn is crossing the yard from the south pen toward the house to start the breakfast routine. The 9 cattle are visible in the south pasture, moving toward the feed trough, because the morning feeding is on a schedule, and they are on the schedule the same as everything else. I am still here, still armed, still walking the perimeter before the sun clears the east field. 67 years old, and winter coming, and the drainage ditch full of the dead, and 6 months of diesel left, and a ledger that says, "We make it through if we are careful," and 1 contact 60 miles south, and seed grain for the spring. Planting and 1 name on a steel plate under the elm that I will carry with me as long as I am walking this ground. This is the Baines place. It has been here since 1922. It will be here after I am gone, if we do this right, if the people on it learn what it knows and take care of what it holds. I go to the west fence to check the post I noted yesterday. There is work to do.